Lieutenant Hyunwoo wiped the sweat from his forehead as he maneuvered his old salvage ship between the floating rocks. The asteroid field was dangerous, but that's where the best scrap usually hid. Pirates, smugglers, and military ships all ended up here eventually, and their wreckage paid his bills. His ship's computer beeped with a weak signal. Something was out there, but it wasn't showing up on normal scanners. Hyunwoo had been doing this job for 8 years, and he'd learned to trust his instincts. Whatever was sending that signal, it was worth investigating. He followed the energy reading to a massive asteroid marked 7 Alpha on his charts. The rock was pockmarked with craters from countless impacts over millions of years, but one crater caught his attention. It wasn't natural. Something had crashed here, and recently. Hyunwoo guided his ship closer and felt his breath catch. Half buried in the crater was a ship unlike anything he'd ever seen. It looked like it was made of crystal and metal fused together, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. The hull was cracked in several places, and a strange blue light leaked from the wounds. He'd heard stories about Vexani ships, but he'd never seen one up close. The Vexani Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their technology was so advanced that most humans couldn't even understand how it worked. What was one of their ships doing crashed in this forgotten corner of space? Hyunwoo docked his salvage ship and put on his environmental suit. The asteroid had no atmosphere, so he'd need protection. He grabbed his emergency medical kit too, just in case. As he approached the crashed vessel, his suit's sensors went crazy. The ship was still partially powered, which was impossible given the damage. Finding an entry point wasn't easy. The Vexani didn't build doors the way humans did. Everything was sealed with energy fields and mental commands. But the crash had torn open several holes in the hull, and Hyunwoo squeezed through the largest one. Inside, the ship was like stepping into a dream. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air shimmered with energy patterns his human eyes couldn't quite process. Broken pieces of what might have been furniture floated in the zero gravity. Everything was beautiful, even in destruction. Then he saw her. She was lying in what looked like a medical chamber, but the healing systems were sparking and failing. Princess Nala of the Vexani Empire, though Hyunwoo didn't know her identity yet. Her skin had an otherworldly glow like moonlight on water, but it was fading fast. Her long silver hair floated around her face like she was underwater. She was the most beautiful being he'd ever seen, but she was clearly dying. Dark veins spread across her arms and neck, pulsing with a sickly purple light. Poison, Hyunwoo realized. Someone had tried to kill her, and from the looks of the crash site, they'd left her here to die slowly. Her eyes fluttered open as he approached. They were completely silver without pupils, but somehow he knew she was looking at him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She was trying to speak, trying to ask for help. Hyunwoo had always been the kind of person who couldn't walk away from someone in trouble. It didn't matter that she was an alien princess and he was just a human salvage worker. It didn't matter that her people probably saw him as a primitive barbarian. She needed help, and he was the only one here to give it. He started by checking her vital signs with his basic medical scanner. The readings were unlike anything in his database, but he could tell she was in bad shape. Her advanced medical systems had failed completely, overwhelmed by whatever poison was killing her. Now it was up to his simple human medicine to save an alien princess. Hyunwoo stared at his basic medical kit and wondered if he was completely insane. Here he was, a human salvage worker, trying to save an alien princess with equipment that barely qualified as first aid. Her people had technology that could rebuild entire planets, yet their advanced healing systems had failed her completely. The dark veins of poison continued spreading across her pale skin. He didn't have much time. Hyunwoo pulled out his portable scanner and tried to make sense of the readings. Her blood chemistry was unlike anything he'd studied, but poison was poison. The basic principles had to be similar, right? He started, with what he knew best. From his kit, he pulled out a broad-spectrum antibiotic that worked on most carbon-based life forms. It was crude compared to Vexani medicine, but sometimes crude worked when sophisticated failed. He prepared the injection and hesitated for just a moment. What if human medicine was toxic to her species? What if he made things worse? Princess Nala's silver eyes found his through her pain. Even dying, there was something about her gaze that seemed to say she trusted him. That decided it. Hyun-woo administered the injection. Within minutes, something incredible happened. The dark veins stopped spreading. The sickly purple glow began to fade. It was working, but he couldn't understand why, according to everything he'd learned about Alien. Biology, human medicine should have been useless on a Vexani, but Hyun-woo didn't stop to question miracles. He pulled out his surgical tools, basic instruments that looked primitive compared to the energy scalpels the Vexani used. The poison had created infected wounds that needed cleaning. He worked carefully, using techniques his grandfather had taught him from old Earth military manuals. As he worked, Princess Nala watched him with growing amazement. She had been raised believing that humans were barely evolved animals, creatures who stumbled around with crude tools while superior species mastered the universe. Yet this human was saving her life with methods her own people would have laughed at. More shocking than his success was his attitude. Every Vexani she'd ever known treated her with formal reverence, careful distance, or calculating interest. But Hyun-woo worked with simple, genuine concern. He talked to her while he operated, explaining what he was doing, asking if she felt pain, treating her like a person rather than a princess. "This might sting a bit," he said as he cleaned another wound. "I know my equipment isn't fancy, but it gets the job done." Princess Nala tried to respond, but her voice was still too weak. She could only watch as this supposedly primitive being accomplished what her empire's best doctors could not. Her healing chamber had cost more than most planets' annual budgets, yet it had failed her completely. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo's simple medicines were bringing her back from death's edge. Hours passed as he worked. He gave her fluids to combat dehydration, administered vitamins to boost her immune system, and used basic wound care that any human medic would know. Nothing he did was revolutionary or complex. It was just practical, hands-on healing that focused on the fundamentals of keeping someone alive. Slowly, Princess Nala's strength began returning. The color came back to her skin, and the terrible pain in her chest eased. She found her voice and whispered her first words to him. "Why are you helping me?" Hyun-woo looked surprised by the question. "Because you needed help. Isn't that reason enough?" That simple answer shook her understanding of the universe. In Vexani society, everything had layers of political meaning, hidden agendas, and calculated benefits. But this human had risked his life to save hers for no reason except basic compassion. As her mind cleared, Princess Nala began questioning everything she'd been taught about humans. If they were truly primitive, how had this one succeeded where her advanced technology failed? If they were just violent animals, why had he shown her more genuine kindness than she'd received from her own people in years? For the first time in her long life, she wondered if the Vexani Empire might be wrong about humanity. The alarm in Hyun-woo's salvage ship started screaming 3 hours after they left the asteroid field. Princess Nala, now strong enough to sit up, watched the scanner display with growing dread. 5 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace behind them, their sleek forms unmistakable even at this distance. "Vexani hunters," she whispered, her voice filled with fear. "They found us." Hyun-woo studied the approaching vessels on his screen. Each one was worth more than his entire ship, packed with weapons that could vaporize him in seconds. The lead ship's communication array was already active, no doubt scanning for Princess Nala's biosignature. "Commander Kyle," Nala said, recognizing the ship's design. "He's the Empire's best tracker. If he's here, it means they want me dead badly enough to send their elite forces." Hyun-woo's hands moved across his ship's controls, checking systems that hadn't been upgraded in years. His cargo hauler was built for carrying scrap metal, not running from military fighters. The engines were old, the shields were weak, and his weapons consisted of a single mining laser that couldn't dent military armor. "Well," he said with a grin that surprised Nala, "I guess we're about to find out how good human stubbornness really is." The chase began immediately. Commander Kyle's ships moved in perfect formation, their quantum phase engines allowing them to appear and disappear at will. They should have caught Hyun-woo's ship within minutes, But the human pilot had other ideas. Instead of running in a straight line like any logical being would do, Hyunwoo dove straight toward the nearest star. The Vexani hunters followed, confident in their superior technology. That confidence lasted exactly 30 seconds. "What are you doing?" Princess Nala gasped as the ship's hull began heating up from solar radiation. "Something your people would never try," Hyunwoo replied, watching his instruments carefully. "I'm going to use this star's solar flare cycle against them." The Vexani ships had better shields and could handle the heat, but their advanced sensors were designed for precision. When the star erupted in a massive solar flare, their targeting systems went haywire. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo navigated by instinct and basic instruments, skills he'd learned from years of flying through dangerous space. Commander Kyle's ships lost them in the electromagnetic chaos. By the time their systems cleared, Hyunwoo had vanished into hyperspace. The pattern continued across 3 star systems. Every time the hunters caught up, Hyunwoo would do something completely unexpected. He hid his ship in the gravitational field of a black hole, using the warped space-time to mask his engine signature. He flew through an asteroid field during a meteor shower, using the chaos to confuse their sensors. Most shocking of all, he flew directly through a space battle between 2 alien fleets, using their weapons fire as cover. The Vexani hunters, trained in precise military tactics, couldn't follow him through such chaotic environments without risking their expensive ships. Princess Nala watched it all with growing amazement. Every maneuver Hyunwoo attempted should have killed them both. His ship's computers kept warning him about impossible stress levels, radiation exposure, and gravitational forces that would crush any normal vessel. But somehow he kept them alive through pure determination and creativity. "How do you do it?" she asked after they escaped the hunters for the 4th time. Hyunwoo shrugged while piloting through a field of gas clouds that interfered with long-range sensors. "Humans don't always follow the rules. Sometimes the impossible solution is the only one that works." The Vexani way of thinking was based on logic, probability, and choosing the most efficient path. Commander Kale's hunters kept trying to predict where Hyunwoo would go next, but human intuition didn't follow mathematical formulas. Where a Vexani computer would calculate the safest route, Hyunwoo chose the most dangerous one because no one would expect it. After days of this deadly game, Princess Nala realized something that shook her to her core. This supposedly primitive human was outthinking the Empire's best military minds. He was accomplishing the impossible not through superior technology, but through the very qualities her people had dismissed as weaknesses. Human courage, creativity, and refusal to accept defeat were proving stronger than all the advanced weapons chasing them. Omega-7 wasn't the kind of place Princess Nala had ever imagined visiting. The space station floated in the void between star systems, a massive collection of salvaged ships and scrap metal welded together over decades. It was home to smugglers, refugees, failed experiments, and anyone else who didn't fit into civilized society. "Stay close," Hyunwoo warned, as they walked through the station's cramped corridors. "This place has its own rules, and they're not written down anywhere." The air smelled of engine fuel, unwashed bodies, and something Princess Nala couldn't identify. Beings from dozens of different species crowded the narrow walkways. Some she recognized from diplomatic meetings, but others looked like they'd been cobbled together from spare parts. The lighting was dim and flickering, casting strange shadows that made everything look dangerous. Princess Nala had spent her entire life in crystal palaces with perfect climate control and servants attending to her every need. Here she was just another refugee trying to stay alive. Her royal robes had been replaced with a simple jumpsuit Hyunwoo had found for her, and she kept her silver hair hidden under a hood. They made it exactly 3 blocks before the bounty. Hunters found them. "Well, well," said a massive creature with 4 arms and too many teeth. "Princess Nala of the Vexani Empire, worth 50 million credits dead or alive." Word spread fast in a place like Omega-7. Within minutes, they were surrounded by every desperate soul on the station who thought they could claim the bounty. Weapons appeared from nowhere, pointing at them from all directions. Princess Nala felt her heart sink. This was it. After everything they'd been through, they were going to die in this forgotten corner of space. But Hyunwoo didn't look scared. Instead, he stepped forward and addressed the crowd like he was talking to old friends. "I know what you're all thinking," he said loudly. 50 million credits is a lot of money. But let me tell you something about that bounty. The Vexani Empire doesn't pay up. They'll take the princess, sure, but then they'll kill everyone who knows about it. You think they want witnesses walking around?" A few of the bounty hunters looked uncertain, but the four-armed creature snarled, "Human lies. The Empire honors its contracts." "Really?" Hyunwoo pulled out his datapad and projected a holographic newsfeed. "Then explain why the last 3 crews who captured Vexani fugitives all died in accidents, within a week of collecting their rewards." Princess Nala watched in amazement as doubt spread through the crowd. Hyunwoo wasn't just talking his way out of trouble. He was actually making these desperate people think about their situation instead of just reacting to it. "Besides," Hyunwoo continued, "I've got a better idea. The princess here has information about Vexani military movements. Shipping schedules, patrol routes, supply convoys. Worth a lot more than 50 million if you know how to use it." That got their attention. Life on Omega-7 was hard, and everyone was always looking for their next score. The idea of robbing Vexani supply ships was much more appealing than handing over a princess and hoping for payment. "Why should we trust you?" asked a scarred human woman with cybernetic implants. "Because," Hyunwoo said simply, "I'm offering you something better than money. I'm offering you hope." Over the next few hours, something incredible happened. Hyunwoo gathered the station's outcasts and began organizing them into a real community. He listened to their problems, shared their food, and treated them like equals instead of criminals. Princess Nala watched him turn enemies into allies through nothing more than genuine respect and shared purpose. The scarred woman, Min Jung, had been a corporate security officer before a scandal destroyed her career. The four-armed creature, despite his intimidating appearance, was actually a gentle soul named Tae-ho, who'd been exiled from his homeworld for refusing to fight in their endless wars. Each person had a story, and Hyunwoo took time to hear them. "Oh, how do you do it?" Princess Nala asked him privately as they worked together to repair damaged sections of the station. "How do you make them trust you so quickly?" Hyunwoo paused in his welding and looked at her seriously. "Because I actually care about them. Your people see them as failures or criminals. I see them as survivors who've been dealt a bad hand by the universe." Princess Nala had never learned to work with her hands, but the other outcasts taught her. They showed her how to fix broken machinery, how to prepare simple meals, how to defend herself without fancy weapons. For the first time in her life, she felt useful rather than just ornamental. What amazed her most was how these supposedly inferior beings looked out for each other. When old Kyung-soo's oxygen recycler broke down, everyone pitched in to fix it. When young Yoonji got sick, the whole community made sure she had medicine and food. They had nothing, but they shared what little they possessed. The Vexani Empire had engineered perfect beings who never needed to rely on others. But in doing so, they'd lost something precious that these outcasts still possessed: the ability to form genuine bonds of loyalty and love. During the long nights on Omega-7, when the station's artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate rest periods, Princess Nala found herself drawn to the observation deck, where Hyunwoo often sat alone. He would stare out at the stars, sometimes working on repairs to his equipment, sometimes just thinking quietly about their situation. "Can't sleep either?" she asked one night, settling down beside him on the metal bench he'd welded together. "From scrap parts." "Too much on my mind," he admitted, not looking away from the viewport. "Back home, the most complicated thing I had to worry about was whether my salvage permits were up to date. Now I'm harboring an alien princess and making enemies of the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Princess Nala studied his profile in the starlight. "Do you regret helping me?" Hyunwoo turned to meet her silver eyes. "Not for a second, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared about what comes next." That honesty surprised her. In Vexani culture, admitting fear was seen as a weakness, especially for those in leadership positions. But Hyunwoo's willingness to be vulnerable somehow made him seem stronger, not weaker. It was another contradiction, about humans that she couldn't understand. "Tell me about your life before this," she said. "What was it like growing up as a human?" So he did. Hyunwoo told her about his childhood on a frontier colony where everyone had to work together to survive. He described learning to fly from his father, who had been a transport pilot. He talked about losing his parents in a mining accident and deciding to become a salvage operator so he could help others the way rescue workers had tried to help his family. Princess Nala shared her own stories, though they felt strange to tell. Her life had been one of luxury and isolation. She'd been educated by the finest tutors, surrounded by priceless art, and trained in diplomatic protocols. But she'd never had real friends, never made her own choices, never experienced genuine hardship until now. "It sounds lonely," Hyunwoo said softly. "It was," she admitted. "I thought that was normal. I thought everyone lived that way, kept apart from others by duty and protocol." As the days passed, they worked side by side, helping to improve life on Omega-7. Hyunwoo taught her practical skills that no Vexani princess had ever learned: how to repair circuitry with limited supplies, how to negotiate with difficult people, how to stand up for herself without relying on royal authority. In return, Princess Nala used her diplomatic training to help resolve conflicts between the station's diverse residents. Her natural telepathic abilities, once used only for formal ceremonies, became tools for understanding what people really needed when they couldn't express it clearly. But something strange was happening to her. The more time she spent with Hyunwoo and the other outcasts, the more she felt emotions that seemed foreign to her own nature. When Hyunwoo was injured during a reactor repair, she felt genuine panic, not the cool concern that Vexani were trained to display. When he recovered and smiled at her, she experienced something warm and fluttering in her chest that had no name in her language. "What's wrong?" Hyunwoo asked one evening when he found her staring at her hands in confusion. "I think something is happening to me," she said quietly. "I'm feeling things that my people don't feel. Emotions that we bred out of ourselves centuries ago." She explained how the Vexani had gradually modified their genetics over thousands of years, removing what they considered primitive impulses. Anger, fear, passionate love, protective jealousy, all of these had been deemed inefficient and eliminated from their biology. But being around you, around all of these people, she gestured toward the common area where station residents were, sharing a communal meal. "It's like something dormant in my DNA is waking up." Hyunwoo reached over and gently took her hand. The touch sent an electric sensation through her that she'd never experienced before. Maybe those feelings weren't primitive. Maybe they were what made life worth living. Princess Nala looked at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt. In Vexani society, physical contact was formal and ritualized. But this simple gesture from Hyunwoo conveyed more meaning than all the elaborate ceremonies of her youth. "My people would say I'm regressing," she whispered, "becoming less evolved." "Or maybe," Hyunwoo suggested, "you're becoming more human. And maybe that's not such a bad thing." That night, Princess Nala dreamed of her ancestors, the early Vexani who had loved and fought and lived with the same intensity that she was beginning to feel. They had built their civilization through passion and determination, not cold logic. Somewhere along the way in their quest for perfection, they had lost the very qualities that made them strong. When she woke, she realized that she no longer wanted to be the perfect Vexani princess. She wanted to be something new, something that combined the best of both species. She wanted to be herself, whatever that might mean. Jin-E arrived on Omega-7 3 weeks after Princess Nala and Hyunwoo had settled into their new life among the station's outcasts. The intelligence broker was a small, nervous woman with cybernetic implants covering half her face, the result of a data mining accident years earlier. She dealt in information that governments preferred to keep secret, and her reputation for accuracy was the only thing keeping her alive in the dangerous world of galactic espionage. "I need to speak with you both privately," Jin-E said, her artificial eye glowing as it scanned the area for listening devices. "What I have to tell you could start a war." They met in an abandoned storage compartment deep in the station's lower levels, away from curious ears. Jin-E activated a portable jamming device that would block any surveillance equipment, then turned to Princess Nala with an expression of deep concern. "Princess, I've been investigating your crash. The official story doesn't add up. Your ships, Flight recorder was supposed to be destroyed, but I managed to recover fragments of the data. She pulled out a small device and projected a holographic display. What I found changes everything. The hologram showed Princess Nala's ship before the crash, but something was wrong. The timestamps indicated she hadn't been alone during the final hours of her journey. Someone else had been aboard, someone with high-level access to Vexani systems. Who was it? Princess Nala asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. Your personal physician, Dr. Yunseok. He was acting on direct orders from the Imperial Council. Jin'e's voice became grim. Princess, you weren't the victim of a political assassination attempt. You were turned into a weapon. The next holographic display made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. It showed medical scans of Princess Nala's body, highlighting a complex biological agent that had been carefully introduced into her system. The technical details were beyond his understanding, but the purpose was horrifyingly clear. They call it the human plague, Jin'e explained. It's a bioweapon specifically designed to target human DNA, dormant in Vexani biology, but lethal to any human who comes into prolonged contact with the carrier. Princess Nala staggered backward, her face pale with shock. No, that's impossible. My own people wouldn't. I'm afraid they would, and they did. Jin'e pulled up more files showing communications between high-ranking Vexani officials. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. They knew humans couldn't resist helping someone in distress. They counted on your inevitable rescue by human salvage crews or merchants. The intelligence broker continued explaining the horrific plot. Princess Nala was supposed to be found by humans, who would naturally try to help her. The bioweapon would then spread through human populations, causing a plague that would wipe out Earth's colonies while appearing to be a natural disease outbreak. The beauty of it from their perspective, Jin'e said bitterly, was that you would never know you were responsible. You'd be grateful to your human rescuers right up until they started dying around you. Hyunwoo felt sick to his stomach, not just because of the planned genocide, but because of what this meant for Princess Nala. She had genuinely believed her own people cared about her, that she was valued as more than just a political tool. How long? Princess Nala whispered. How long before it activates? Jin'e checked her data. According to the original timeline, it should have triggered within 72 hours of human contact. That was over a month ago. But nothing happened, Hyunwoo said, confused. I've been fine. Everyone on the station is healthy. That's the strangest part of all this, Jin'e admitted. Somehow, the bioweapon has been neutralized. My sources in Vexani intelligence are panicking because their perfect plan failed completely. Princess Nala sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her people's betrayal. She had been raised to believe that the Vexani Empire represented the pinnacle of civilization, that they were benevolent guardians of galactic peace. To discover that they were willing to commit genocide using her as an unwitting weapon shattered everything she thought she knew about her world. They used me, she said quietly. My own government, my own family, they turned me into a tool for mass murder. Hyunwoo knelt beside her, ignoring Jin'e's warning about potential contamination. But their plan failed. Whatever they did to you, it didn't work. Why? Princess Nala looked up at him with tears in her silver eyes. Why didn't it work? Jin'e shook her head. I don't know. But I do know that when they figure out what went wrong, they'll try again, and next time they might not be so subtle about it. The three of them sat in the dim storage room, processing the implications of this revelation. The Vexani Empire, supposedly the most advanced and civilized species in the galaxy, had attempted genocide against humanity. They had been willing to sacrifice one of their own princesses to achieve their goal, but somehow, against all odds and scientific probability, their perfect bioweapon had failed. The question now was whether they could figure out why before the Empire tried again. Dr. Sung-ho was the closest thing Omega-7 had to a real medical professional. He'd been a military surgeon before a court-martial ended his career, and now he patched up whoever could pay his modest fees. When Jin'e insisted they needed to understand why the bioweapon had failed, he was their only option for answers. This is fascinating, Dr. Sung-ho muttered as he studied Princess Nala's blood samples under his improvised laboratory equipment. And terrifying, but mostly fascinating. He'd been working for hours, comparing her current biology with the data Ginny had stolen from Vexani medical files. The results were so unexpected that he'd run the tests 3 times to make sure they were accurate. The bioweapon is still there, he explained to the anxious group gathered around his workstation. But it's been completely neutralized. Not destroyed, mind you, neutralized. There's a difference. Hyunwoo frowned. What kind of difference? Think of it like a key that's been changed to fit a different lock, Dr. Sung-ho said, pulling up holographic displays of molecular structures. The weapon was designed to activate when it encountered human DNA, but something has altered Princess Nala's genetic makeup so drastically that the trigger mechanism no longer recognizes the target. Princess Nala stared at the swirling patterns of genetic code floating in the air. How is that possible? Vexani genetics are supposed to be stable. We've been the same for thousands of years. That's where it gets really interesting, Dr. Sung-ho said, his excitement growing. Your DNA is changing, Princess. Sequences that have been dormant for millennia are suddenly becoming active. It's like watching evolution happen in fast forward. He pointed to specific sections of the genetic display. These patterns here, they don't match modern Vexani genetics at all, but when I compared them to ancient DNA samples from archaeological sites, I found something incredible. These are the genetic patterns of your ancestors from over 10,000 years ago. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Jinye was the first to speak. You're saying she's becoming less evolved? No, Dr. Sung-ho shook his head firmly. I'm saying she's becoming more complete. The modern Vexani have spent centuries removing parts of their genetic heritage that they considered primitive. But those weren't flaws to be eliminated. They were features that made their ancestors strong, adaptive, and resilient. He turned to Princess Nala with a mixture of scientific curiosity and genuine concern. The question is, what triggered this genetic awakening? Something in your environment has activated dormant code that should have stayed silent forever. Princess Nala looked at Hyunwoo, understanding beginning to dawn in her silver eyes. It started when I met him, when I began feeling emotions that my people don't experience anymore. Emotional stimulation can trigger genetic expression, Dr. Sung-ho mused. But this level of change suggests something more profound. What exactly have you been feeling? For the first time since learning about the bioweapon, Princess Nala smiled. Everything. Fear when Hyunwoo was in danger. Joy when we succeeded against impossible odds. Anger at my people's betrayal. And... She hesitated, looking at Hyunwoo. Love. Something my people engineered out of themselves because they thought it made us weak. Dr. Sung-ho's eyes widened as he made the connection. Love. Of course. The most powerful genetic trigger in any species. Your people removed the capacity for deep emotional bonds, but the underlying genetic framework remained. When you began experiencing genuine love for the first time, it awakened everything else. He pulled up more data, showing how Princess Nala's brain chemistry had changed over the past weeks. This is remarkable. Your neurological patterns are becoming more complex, more adaptable. You're developing the same kind of emotional range and creative thinking that makes humans so unpredictable. And that's what saved her? Hyunwoo asked. That's what saved all of us, Dr. Sung-ho corrected. The bioweapon was designed to target a specific type of biology, cold, logical, predictable Vexani genetics. But Princess Nala isn't fully Vexani anymore. She's becoming something new, something that combines the best traits of both species. Princess Nala stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. My people spent thousands of years perfecting themselves, removing what they saw as weaknesses. But they weren't weaknesses at all. They were the very things that made life worth living. The capacity for love, for sacrifice, for hope against impossible odds, Hyunwoo said, joining her at the window. The things that make humans human. And the things that made ancient Vexani strong enough to build an empire in the first place, she replied. Before they decided that emotions were inefficient, Dr. Sung-ho gathered his equipment, shaking his head in wonder. Your love story didn't just save your life, Princess. It may have saved both our species. The bioweapon failed because you chose to feel rather than think, to love rather than calculate. Jin'ei looked up from her data pad where she'd been taking notes. This changes everything. If the Empire learns that emotional connections can trigger genetic reversals, they'll see it as a threat to their entire civilization. Princess Nala took Hyunwoo's hand, feeling the now familiar warmth that spread through her at his touch. Let them be threatened. I've seen what my people became when they chose perfection over passion. I'd rather be flawed and alive than perfect. And empty. For the first time since learning the truth about her purpose, she felt hope. The bioweapon had failed not because of advanced technology or clever strategy, but because of the simplest and most powerful force in the universe: love. The first warning came from Omega-7's ancient sensor array, a collection of salvaged equipment that barely functioned on good days. But even its failing systems couldn't miss the massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 2 fleets, reported Minjung from the station's makeshift command center. Human Defense Force, coming in from the Galactic North, Vexani Imperial Navy from the south. They'll be in weapons range of each other in less than 6 hours. Hyunwoo stood beside Princess Nala in the observation deck, watching the distant specks of light that represented hundreds of warships positioning for battle. Each fleet was powerful enough to glass entire planets, and they were converging on the small defenseless station that had become their unlikely home. "They're not here for Omega-7, Princess Nala said quietly. "They're here for me." The communication channels erupted with military chatter as both fleets attempted to establish control of the situation. Admiral So-jin's voice cut through the static first, her tone professional but strained. "Attention, Omega-7 station. This is Admiral So-jin of the Human Defense Force. We have reliable intelligence that you are harboring Princess Nala of the Vexani Empire. Surrender her immediately for questioning regarding acts of biological warfare against human colonies." Before anyone could respond, another voice filled the comm channels. Empress Yuna herself had come to retrieve her wayward princess, and her message was far less diplomatic. "Citizens of Omega-7, you are harboring a fugitive from Imperial justice. Princess Nala will be returned to face trial for treason against the Empire. Any who interfere will be considered enemies of the Vexani state." The station's residents gathered in the common areas, fear evident on faces that had seen too much hardship already. These were people who had fled from wars, persecution, and failed governments. Now 2 of the galaxy's most powerful forces were threatening to destroy their small sanctuary. "We could run," suggested Taeho, the 4-armed gentle giant who had become the station's unofficial security chief. "The escape pods might get some of us out before the shooting starts." "And go where?" asked old Kyung-soo. "This is the only home most of us have left." Princess Nala listened to the frightened discussions around her, then made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She walked to the station's main communication array and activated the emergency broadcast system that would transmit on all frequencies. "This is Princess Nala of the Vexani Empire," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "I am broadcasting on all channels so that both fleets can hear the truth about why you're really here." Admiral So-jin's flagship immediately responded. "Princess, you are ordered to cease transmission and prepare for immediate custody transfer." "No," Princess Nala replied firmly. "I will not be silenced, not when the lives of billions hang in the balance." She looked at Hyunwoo, drawing strength from his encouraging nod, then continued her broadcast. "Admiral So-jin, your intelligence reports are correct. There was a biological weapon designed to target human populations. But what you don't know is that I was not the perpetrator. I was the delivery system." The communication channels fell silent as she explained everything. The planned genocide, her unwitting role as a carrier, the Empire's willingness to sacrifice their own princess to achieve their goals. She held nothing back, broadcasting Jin'ei's stolen intelligence files as proof of the conspiracy. "My own government infected me with this weapon," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "They counted on human compassion to ensure I would be rescued. They wanted you to save me so that I could unknowingly destroy you all." Empress Yuna's response was immediate and furious. "You dare accuse the Imperial Council of such barbarism? Your own treason has clearly driven you to madness." "Then explain this," Princess Nala replied, transmitting the medical records that Showed the bioweapon in her system. Explain why your own physician, Dr. Yoon Seok, injected me with a biological agent specifically designed to kill humans. Explain why my crash was staged to ensure human discovery. The evidence was overwhelming. Even as Empress Yuna tried to dismiss the accusations, her own fleet commanders could be heard on open channels expressing doubt and concern. The humans, meanwhile, were struggling to understand why their supposedly imminent doom had never materialized. The weapon failed, Princess Nala explained, not because of Vexani technology or imperial mercy, but because of something my people had forgotten existed. Love, genuine emotion, the capacity for feelings that we bred out of ourselves because we thought they made us weak. She told them about her genetic awakening, about the dormant sequences that had activated when she experienced true emotion for the first time. She explained how her growing connection to Hyunwoo and the other outcasts had literally rewritten her biology, making the bioweapon ineffective. "I am no longer the perfect Vexani princess you wanted me to be," she concluded, looking directly at the camera. "I am something new, something that your cold, logical empire cannot understand or control, and I choose to stand with the humans who showed me what it means to truly live." The galaxy held its breath as two massive fleets faced each other across the void, their commanders forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The truth was out, broadcast across every channel, recorded on every ship's communication logs. There could be no more lies, no more hidden agendas. Whatever happened next would determine not just the fate of two species, but the future of civilization itself. The silence that followed Princess Nala's broadcast lasted exactly 14 minutes. Then both fleets erupted into chaos as commanders on every ship tried to process what they'd just heard. The carefully planned military operation had suddenly become something much more complicated. Admiral So Jin was the first to break the silence. "Princess Nala, your testimony has been recorded and will be presented to the Human Defense Council. However, you remain a person of interest in this matter. We cannot simply take your word that the bioweapon has been neutralized." Empress Yuna's response was predictably harsher. "You have committed the highest form of treason against your own species. Return to imperial custody immediately, or face the consequences of your rebellion." Princess Nala stood in Omega 7's communication center, surrounded by the outcasts who had become her chosen family. Hyunwoo stood beside her, ready to support whatever decision she made. The entire galaxy was watching, waiting to see what she would do next. "I have something to say to both fleets," she announced, her voice carrying across space to hundreds of warships, "and to my people, who are listening on every Vexani world." She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change everything forever. "I, Princess Nala of the Vexani Empire, formally abdicate my claim to the throne. I renounce my titles, my inheritance, and my citizenship in the Empire. I choose instead to remain here, with the humans who taught me what it means to be truly alive." The reaction was immediate and explosive. On the Imperial flagship, Empress Yuna's rage was so intense that her biomonitors triggered medical alerts. On the human ships, Admiral So Jin found herself dealing with crew members who were openly weeping at the princess's sacrifice. But the most dramatic response came from an unexpected source. Throughout Vexani space, young members of the species who had been watching the broadcast began speaking out. They flooded communication networks with messages of support for Princess Nala's choice. They questioned why their perfect society needed to commit genocide to maintain its supremacy. They asked why love and emotion were considered weaknesses instead of strengths. "She's right," transmitted Sub-Commander Haewon from the Imperial Fleet. "We've become so obsessed with perfection that we've forgotten how to live." "The princess chose love over duty," added Navigation Officer Dongmin. "When was the last time any of us made a choice based on what we felt rather than what we were told to feel?" Empress Yuna tried to silence the growing rebellion in her own ranks, but it was too late. The truth had been released, and it was spreading faster than any bioweapon could have. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo was studying the tactical displays with growing concern. "Something's wrong," he told Princess Nala quietly. "Both fleets are positioning for battle, but their formations don't make sense. They're not preparing to fight each other." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the answer revealed itself. Long-range sensors detected a third fleet approaching from the galactic rim, moving at impossible speeds. These weren't human or Vexani ships. They were something else entirely, something that had been watching the drama unfold while preparing their own intervention. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," Admiral Sojin transmitted to the approaching fleet. The response chilled everyone who heard it. "We are the arbiters of galactic order. Your species have proven themselves incapable of peaceful coexistence. Both humanity and the Vexani Empire will be placed under our protection until you can evolve beyond your primitive conflicts." Hyunwoo felt a familiar spark of inspiration, the same creative thinking that had kept them alive through every impossible situation. "Admiral Sojin, Empress Yuna, I know you have no reason to trust a salvage worker, but I have an idea that might save all of us." "Speak quickly, human," Empress Yuna replied, her earlier hostility replaced by pragmatic concern. "The arbiters think we're too primitive to govern ourselves," Hyunwoo explained. "But what if we prove them wrong? What if Princess Nala's choice shows them something they didn't expect?" His plan was audacious, even by human standards. Instead of fighting the arbiters or each other, both fleets would stand down and demonstrate the very qualities that made their species worth preserving. The humans would show their capacity for forgiveness by offering aid to the Vexani refugees who were fleeing their oppressive empire. The Vexani would demonstrate their potential for growth by protecting human colonies from arbiter interference. "You're asking us to trust each other," Admiral Sojin said slowly. "I'm asking you to prove that love and hope aren't primitive emotions," Princess Nala interjected. "They're the most advanced forces in the universe. They're what separate us from the Arbiter's cold logic." As the alien Arbiter fleet drew closer, something unprecedented happened. Human and Vexani ships began moving into defensive positions around Omega-7, protecting the small station that had become the symbol of everything worth fighting for. Former enemies worked together, sharing tactical data and coordinating their efforts. The revolution Princess Nala had started with her choice was spreading beyond individual ships to entire civilizations. Young Vexani were openly defying their government's orders. Human colonies were welcoming Vexani refugees, and at the center of it all, a salvage worker and an exiled princess stood hand in hand, proving that love could indeed conquer the greatest obstacles in the universe. The arbiters had come to impose order on chaos, but instead they found something they couldn't understand or control. Hope made manifest in the courage to choose love over logic, connection over perfection, and freedom over safety.